Good day, everybody. It's time to get going with our webinar. Thank you for joining me. My name is Graham Codrington, and today we are looking at making the most of virtual working. If you're joining us live, it's the 19th of April, 2017. If you're watching a recording of this, well, who knows what date and time it is. I hope you're having a good one. 20 years ago, in 1997, a Hitachi executive called Tsugio Makimoto, I just want to get the exact quote I'm about to read here in front of me, he predicted a revolution. He wrote a book called The Digital Nomad with co-author David Manners. And in it, Makimoto said that high-speed wireless networks and low-cost mobile devices will break the link between occupation and location. Thanks to Moore's law, millions will indulge in innate wanderlust by selling their homes and living abroad, doing their jobs over the internet and enjoying the benefits of first world income and developing world cost of living. No more rat race grind of cubicle and commute. That was 1997, not a bad prediction. But hardly anybody listened. 10 years later, Tim Ferriss wrote a book which became a bestseller. It was called The 4-Hour Work Week. Escape 9 to 5, live anywhere, and join the new rich. Now, Tim's book was a sort of hodgepodge of life hacks and business ideas aimed at getting people to think about this digital world that we're now quite familiar with. And in it, he also predicted that we would separate our occupation from our location and be able to work virtually. Look, neither of these guys in their books predicted all of the technologies we would have. They didn't predict webinars. They didn't predict apps and mobile smartphones and the way in which the internet has evolved into video and high-speed data transfer. They didn't predict the sharing economy. But they were absolutely right about the fact that the virtual working environment is the way of the future. People working flexi time, working from home, working virtually, teams that are spread around the world and never meet each other face to face. This is the new norm. So that's what we're talking about today. And thank you for taking some time out of your working day to connect with us and to join us on this webinar. This webinar is not just for people who want to be remote or flexi or virtual workers themselves. Have you ever wanted to maybe just spend a little bit of time out of the office and you've battled to convince your boss? Well, this webinar is for you. We're going to give you some ways in which you can convince your boss to just give it a go. Do you work with a multinational team? You might all be in offices, but as a team, you are virtual to each other. Well, then the tips and tricks we're going to talk about today are going to be very useful for you. It was 1997 when Makimoto wrote his book, and that was the year in which I started to work remotely. Up until that point, I had worked for KPMG as an article clerk, and beyond that worked in an IT startup company that did solutions development. And around about 1997, began to realize that I really didn't want to have a job in a company behind a desk. I wanted the life of the road warrior, to be a consultant, to be on the road, to start my own business. And it was 5 years after that we started our company, Tomorrow Today. And as Tomorrow Today, we have always worked virtually, except for a few months, a few years ago, where we had an experiment with our London crowd. They took office space for a few months and then gave it up. For 15 years, we've been a virtual team. We're spread around many countries in different time zones on different continents. And we've learned some stuff. We don't get everything right. We don't consider ourselves world experts on this. But personally and as a team, we have some experiences that we'd like to share with you. So I hope this is going to be useful and valuable. The way it's going to work is I'm going to take about half an hour from now to present some content to you, and you're going to have an opportunity to interact with me after that. with some Q&A. At any stage, you can go into the chat room. So if you are new to Webinar Jam, you should be able to see somewhere on your control panel a chat room. And maybe let's just make sure that you're all awake and with us and can use the technology. Now, why don't you go in and just tell us which city or country you've connected in. Chris, I see you're from Durban. I know that we have somebody on the line from London as well. I'm in Johannesburg today. But why don't you just right now hop along to the chat facility and just let us know what city you're in. And then at least I know you're there and know that you are with me. The one thing I just do want to say, because I know that a few people who have signed up today are part of a corporate environment, and the one thing we're not going to cover today is how to deal with your IT departments. I know that some of you work in companies and in places where you have some quite stringent IT controls over what you can and can't do, and how you can or can't engage with technology. And we're not able to solve those problems for you. Hopefully some of what we say today you can use to justify working virtually and using technology. But if you've got an IT department that doesn't really serve the business but acts more as compliance police, well, in fact, in this month's Future of Work Academy, you can go and read an article I wrote about that, about corporate IT. And there'll be some ideas for you to use there. Talking of the Academy, I know that some of you who've signed up for the webinar today are new members of the Future of Work Academy. I know that one or two of you are also just investigating this Academy thing, and I'll give you a little bit more information about that later. Okay, so let's have a look at what you're saying. We've got somebody from White River, somebody from Shrewsbury in England, and Raymond's asking if you can only see my face. Yeah, that's all there is to see at the moment. We'll be giving you some slides in a second, but if you can hear me, and if you can see me, I assume you can hear me, otherwise you wouldn't be answering my questions. But if you can see my face and hear me, you're perfect. You are good to go. I'll be switching into some slides in a few moments. So just to remind you, if you are live today, there will be a Q&A session and you can ask questions through that chat facility at any stage. If you are on the recording and watching this at a later stage, thank you for doing that. And please know that you can always go to our Facebook group. The Future of Work Academy membership gives you access to a private Facebook group, which you are able to access at any stage. And it's not a live link that you get with our team, but it's as close to live as you're going to get. We watch that Facebook page all the time, and you will be able to interact with our team, ask your questions, even if it's many months later, ask your questions, and we will get back to you. Okay. Right. I think everything's set up. Welcome. Good to go. So let's dive into this. When I talk about virtual working, what I'm really meaning is that we are talking about people who are not physically located in an office or are not located in the same geographical space as the rest of their team. That's the kind of normal setup for work environments. Virtual workers or remote workers, and we could add in the word flexi time or flexible workers who might work from home for some of the time or work from a different location, or just might be removed from their team for whatever reason. That might be a multinational team. It might be different locations for the offices. All of these are in my head when I talk about virtual working. Obviously, at some level, I'm specifically thinking about the person who has deliberately decided to not go into an office and is working from home or a coffee shop or a co-working space. So although what I'm saying today applies to everybody in this virtual space, some of what I say will apply specifically to the person who's chosen to not go to the office for a particular reason. And why is this a thing? Well, from a company's perspective, companies might choose to go along with virtual working for cost saving. You don't need as much office space if a lot of people are making their own office spaces. Some companies are doing this for staff engagement. People want to work from home. Not necessarily every day all the time, but maybe a few days a week or a few days a month. And companies are doing that as a way of promoting staff enjoyment of their work environment. Some are doing it because of it's just geography and multinational, and others are doing it for scalability. You can build a team very quickly if you're working in a virtual environment, getting the right skills at exactly the right time, paying them often only for the time you need them for, if they are truly a virtual member of your team. From the personal perspective, from ourselves, why would we want to do this? Well, one of the answers is you might be an introvert and prefer your own company. Some people can't even imagine working on their own with no physical connection with their team. I'm an introvert and I love it. We obviously save in commuting time. Traffic is no issue for us. It helps us with work-life integration if that is an issue. We've all seen, I'm sure, that lovely BBC video of the guy doing a live link to BBC and his kids run into the room. He probably didn't handle it as well as he should have the first time round. And then BBC gave him another go and used it to talk about the issue of working from home, which was fantastic. And you know what? For many people, including myself, we are much more productive when we are in our own space and where we can manage our own environment rather than being stuck in the office. Of course, there's some huge disadvantages for all of us. Team dynamics need to be dealt with, and we'll talk about this during this webinar. Some jobs can't be done virtually or remotely. They are time bound or they are physical presence bound. There can be a risk to reputation. I think still sometimes our clients don't see remote workers as real. I know my colleague Jude, who's actually helping me in the background make sure that everything works on this webinar. She's got 2 small kids and she is often taking phone calls while she's sitting in a school playground. And, from an internal perspective at Tomorrow Today, we have no issue with that. But it can be interesting to hear reactions of clients when they work out that we're not really in an office and we have this work-life balance. One of my clients, I won't mention his name, he works at a big business school. He actually refuses to put any of his colleagues onto his Facebook page as friends because he has this work-life virtual working environment going on, and too many of his colleagues just question his work ethic all the time. So there is a risk to reputation of the company and to you as a person. Obviously, there can be security and compliance issues that go along with it, and technology can let us down. I hope it doesn't do that today. There are a lot of companies already doing this, though, and we can learn from them. And as I say, Tomorrow Today, we've been doing it for a while, and hopefully you can learn from us today. So I'm going to dive in now and give you 15 tips and tricks. I'll move through these very quickly. You will be able to come back to the Future of Work Academy to April 2017 and get a copy of my notes if I'm going too quickly and you're taking notes. All of my notes are going to be available in digital format for you to download alongside the recording of this webinar. But as I dive in, those of you who've been with us before, you will know that there's a little few second delay while I shift across to my slides. And while we are jumping across there, can I just ask each of you to just hop into the chat room quickly and just put a yes or a no. Just let me know, do you currently work virtually? Not necessarily 100% of the time. Let's say if you work more than 20% of the time, you work virtually. So not if you just spend 1 or 2 hours a day working at home. If there's a chunk of your time, maybe 1 day per week, if you work away from the office, work virtually, just put a yes. If you don't work virtually at all, just pop a no. And we'll be about a 5-10 second pause while I switch over, and then we get going again. Right, thank you for that. It looks like we have quite a few people who are working virtually. So yeah, well, thank you for joining us. And as I go along, in fact, if you want to contribute and add to what I'm saying, please just use this chat box, add ideas. I'm going to give a few ideas around apps and technology that might be useful. If you know of other things that are worth looking at, please hop into that chat box and let us know. Right, so let's dive in straight away. And let me talk about these 15 tips and tricks that we talk about. The first few are related to us as teams, and then the last few are related to us as individuals. So the first thing you can see there is that we need to communicate well, and we need to communicate often. This is probably the most important thing that we need to do as virtual workers. Employees who chat for a few minutes with their colleagues, research has shown that they can get a 20% boost in their performance. And, you can use that research to say that we shouldn't have remote working, because if we are together with our colleagues, we're going to work better. But you know what, today there's so many tools that are available to help people connect both visually and vocally, that there's no reason for physical presence to be an inhibitor to virtual working. But if you are working virtually, you need to build tools, use tools to make sure that you do connect with your team on a regular basis. Now, obviously, there's a whole lot of video communication apps. Skype and Zoom and FaceTime are all available. I'm not a huge fan of Skype anymore. It seems to have gone downhill since Microsoft took it over, or maybe that's unfair. Maybe it's just gone downhill since everybody started using it. But if you've got good connection, Skype will still work, but there are lots of other options. You can also go to, for example, Google Hangouts, or use formal webinar type tools, especially for your formal meetings. And there's no reason why you can't have one-on-one time with coworkers or group meetings visually connecting. We also obviously have text apps like WhatsApp to be able to do text communication, both one-on-one and in groups. And then there are also the various group apps that you can use, things like Slack or Yammer. So lots of different platforms, and you probably have to experiment a little bit to work out which works best for your team, and always have hopefully somebody in your team who's always trying out something new. So that there's always something to try. Don't be scared to abandon systems that are not working, and don't be scared to give somebody in your team a specific instruction to go and investigate a new approach. I mean, these just keep coming and going and getting better and better. Here are a few specific suggestions about communicating well and often. First of all, set up regular team meetings. At Tomorrow Today, we have a Monday morning all hands meeting. Everybody needs to get there. We have it quite early, and depending on time zones, we shift it around just a little bit to make sure that everybody can get in. For some people, it's a bit of a sacrifice to get up early, but we encourage everybody to get in. We use Google Hangouts for that one. And by the way, we record them so that people who, for whatever reason, can't attend are able to watch the recording. And we ask them to watch the recording fairly soon after the meeting. You could also have virtual lunches with team members and colleagues. It really is important to have these one-on-one times with some of your colleagues, or maybe smaller groups. And when I say virtual lunches, it's where there isn't a sort of official agenda. It's just, hey, let's just have a little chat together. And, having the concept of, well, get your lunch, and we kind of, while we're munching away, we can just chat to each other. Just a nice, final little piece of technology here that will help you. We use a system every now and again called Doodle, DOODLE.com. And that will help you to set up meetings virtually with people, especially if you've got a big team, or you're including outsiders, or it's not held at a specific time of the week each week. Doodle, check it out, will help you to schedule those meetings. So communicate well and communicate often. Maybe let me even rephrase that. You cannot communicate enough. If you're communicating a lot, communicate more. That really is one of the secrets that we've found to virtual working successfully. Secondly, be very clear about the roles and responsibilities that each of the people have in the system, and check in often about who's doing what. Now, at one level, this is just good meeting management anyway. Once we've had our team meeting on a Monday, we agree about who's going to do what during the week, and then we make sure that we follow up with those people, and we, find out, have they done it? And we know as we leave a meeting, we know who is supposed to do what and by when it's supposed to be done. And I suppose at the heart of this second principle is trust. Trust is absolutely vital for a team working. And when you're in an office, you can look across at other people. It might not be an accurate assessment, but if you see them busy, there's a kind of sense, well, they're busy working and they're doing the things they're supposed to be doing. And if I'm waiting for them to do something, I can at least see that they're busy. Now, they might be doing something else or not be productive, but visually you get a sense of that in an office. You have no sense of that in a virtual team. And you can easily, when you're watching a virtual team member on a Facebook page saying they're watching so much sport, or they've gone shopping, or they're on a beach, trust can break down. So awareness of who's supposed to do what, by when, checking in, putting milestones in place, talking to each other, telling people where you are. If you're struggling with something or falling behind on your timing, letting other people know. And all of this has got to do with that first main point. We'll talk about it a lot: communication. Just keep communicating. This is where a good leader in a team really helps. Because the leader helps to set those clear goals and expectations, then follows up with each of the individuals and publicizes what's happening with the team. So there's essentially constant feedback going on, and making sure that we check in with each other on a regular basis. Now, this leads to my third point, is that you need to have somebody who is managing each of the various tasks and projects in the team. Now, this could be one person who manages this. If you're a big enough team and have the budget, there could be an admin person who does this, or this could be split up between people. Just by traffic management, that's an advertising and marketing world phrase. Just means making sure that everything that's supposed to be happening on a certain day is happening. And it's just about checking in and just making sure that everything is ticking along. Maybe I've just been saying the same thing 3 times. Communicate effectively. Just by the way, while I'm talking about this, don't forget different time zones. If your team is spread across time zones, even just 2 or 3 hours can make a huge difference to how things work. And whenever you give a time for something, always include the time zone. Just by the way, I think that's a general thing to do. Just include the time zone. Just even if it's the city in which you live or work, just get into that habit. We live in a 24/7 world with 24 time zones. Right. Fourthly, we need to get personal. Virtual teams work best when they know and trust each other. And this takes a lot of effort. We need to take the time to build relationships with our team. And it's easier when you're in an office, and it takes deliberate and conscious time and effort when you are not. So this is more than just the checking in and communicating. This is about communicating with the purpose of building relationships. So here's an idea in doing research for the webinar that we haven't been using at Tomorrow Today. And I see that 3 of my Tomorrow Today colleagues are in the webinar. Hey team, we're going to try this starting on our next team meeting on Monday. We're going to start each team meeting with one person taking a few minutes to share some information about themselves. Maybe it's sharing photographs from a recent vacation that you went on or an outing, or maybe sharing a favorite recipe or telling us about a hobby, sharing some information about something that you know that other people don't know. And it's just a way to get to know you. It might not sound like much, but I was convinced by the person who said that this had worked for their team. I think it'll work for ours, and we're going to give it a go. It boosts our engagement with each other and therefore our connections with each other. Just by the way, part of getting personal is realizing that in an office environment, you get visual cues as to whether somebody's having a good or a bad day. You know, you can see the thunder in somebody's face or the stomp as they walk into your office. You don't get to see that in a virtual world. You're often just getting a WhatsApp message or a quick voice note or an email. And maybe you're having a bad day and you interpret what they do through your bad day lens, or maybe they're having a bad day and you don't notice it, or you think that it's more serious than it actually is, whereas actually they're just being a bit grumpy for a few hours. We tend to interpret things through the lens of how we are feeling at the time of receiving information, rather than from the perspective of the way that the person who sent it may have been feeling when they sent it. So remember, when you can't see the other person, always assume that there's a context and ask for that context. If you are the person giving information, give the context. If you're having a bad day, tell everybody on the team, guys, today I'm just feeling grumpy. Don't know why, don't need your help, but I just need you to know I'm having a grumpy day. So include personal information in your communications is what I'm saying. From a more strategic perspective, you do want to get your team to connect and communicate and trust each other more. And if you have the budget and if it's possible, it really is a good idea to do face-to-face meetings early on in a team's development, and at regular, once or twice a year if you can. Or if a big change happens in a team, really make whatever effort you can to get in the same room for at least a day in order to make that connection happen. And finally, to get personal, don't forget, from a team perspective, the one-on-ones that you can have with your team. Just don't just go into the group conversation. Connect and have a little bit of banter, that cliche water cooler conversations with your teams. Fifthly, you need to change your measurements. Yes, change is the right word, but you at least need to think about them, because you need to know exactly how you are going to measure productivity. Just a big hint, you can only really measure outputs in a virtual environment. We really shouldn't be measuring hours worked and start time, end time in a virtual environment. That just kind of really defeats the object of that. Now, some things are easy to measure. in a virtual environment. Somebody's got to produce a report and they've got to produce it by Thursday. Easy to measure. Didn't they do it? Other things can be more clarify not just the goals and the roles that people have, but also tasks and processes. So what are you going to do by when? It's not just a overall goals and objectives. It's actually more tasks, step by step. What are you doing today? Now, there's a danger in micromanaging, but that's not what this is about. This is about just making sure that we keep people accountable to working. You can fool yourself in a virtual environment by thinking that people will just think you're working because they can't see you. But you know what? It's going to catch up with you very quickly if you don't actually work. You can't hide forever in a virtual environment. So make sure that you monitor, evaluate, and regulate your own performance and the performance of everybody in your team. And by the way, if you're bringing a new member into the team, this life isn't for everybody. And we would recommend giving them a good 3 months test in a virtual environment. If you're moving from an office environment to becoming a virtual worker, it's going to take you 3 months to work out whether this will actually work for you. The first week will be brilliant, and the second week will be a train crash because, there's stuff to sort out. We're getting to that in a second. Give yourself 3 months to evaluate whether it's working or not. Now, sixth, let's keep moving. Get your technology right. I'm talking still as a team. We're about to look at the personal stuff, but as a team side, get your technology right. You're going to need to experiment forever, by the way. You're going to have to experiment over and over again to find things. Our top tips for technology are use WhatsApp for communications and create different WhatsApp groups. Each project should have a different group. Each team should have a different group. And each group within your team, little subgroups, should have their own groups. There's unlimited groups available in WhatsApp. Use them. Secondly, use Dropbox or something familiar or similar. We use Dropbox. There are other options like Google Drive, for example. But have a place where you can put documents that your team needs to share. I'll come back to that in a moment. We use Google Sheets and Google Docs. In actual fact, we've bought into the whole Google business environment. So we use Gmail and everything else as our primary backend to drive what we're doing. But Google Sheets and Google Docs are fantastic for sharing documents that multiple people need to work on. We specifically use Google Docs and Sheets to do all of our measurements. We were talking about measurements a moment ago, to measure who does what and to keep a record of outputs and when things are due and when things are delivered. If you need a project management system, if the work you do works on projects, then also have some kind of project management system. In the past, we had programs like Highrise or Bootcamp, but you can also use Slack or a variety of other programs to just manage it. At the moment, we use Evernote to create groups that have little sort of time-sensitive projects linked to them. But now, can I ask you for your help? I've been prattling on here, hopefully not putting you to sleep. If you have any top tips for apps or specifically for tech tools that you are using, can you pop those into the chat box for us? To just let us know if there are any other apps besides the ones I've mentioned that will be really good from a technology perspective. Right, now the seventh final of my tips for teams, we've been talking a lot about teams now, is to keep your information flowing and keep information accessible. Our entire staff shares information. We've got all of our financials, all of our invoicing, all of our requests for proposals, all of our content that we deliver. All of that we keep in either Dropbox or in Google Documents or Google Sheets, and everybody has access to it. So everybody's got access to everything that they might need. Essentially, I suppose what I'm saying is overdo communication and overdo information flow. And then have constant conversations about how to improve communication and improve information accessibility. Now, don't forget that you do have a Q&A option. In about 10 minutes or so, I'm going to stop what I'm saying and move to Q&A. So if you have questions, please make sure that you start popping those questions into the chat box so that by the time we get to Q&A, I've got a few to get me started. But now let's shift to the more personal side. If you are a virtual worker, if you are maybe what they call a road warrior or a digital nomad or a flexi worker, what do you have to do to make this work for you? Well, first of all, you need to find some great workspaces. This really does depend on you and your needs, and self-knowledge about this is important. My experience with people who shift to this is they don't really know where they are going to work best if they've always worked in an office. So you might have to experiment a little bit. Personally, I really do like working from home. I'm at home right now. You might have just heard the dog going a little bit mad in the background. We've got some birds that sit up on a wire outside and really taunt the dog. So every now and again, there's a dog barking in the background. And I think given the time of day, one or two of my daughters might be coming home from school. Now, I've had to tell them today that I'm working from home and ask them to not interrupt me. So you've got to set up the systems to make sure it works for you. But as soon as I'm finished now, I am going to go out and greet my kids and get into some shorts and a t-shirt and enjoy the rest of the afternoon at home. That works for me. But maybe you're going to need a coffee shop. Maybe you're going to need a co-working space. There's a lot of rent by the hour offices in almost every city in the world. So take some time to experiment with different spaces. You need to have a space that you know has got good Wi-Fi, that's got power points for your power sockets for your devices. That can give you the type of food and drink that you need. And that obviously has relative quiet and it's where you can work. I use a really great app called WHA. It's Work Hard Anywhere. WHA by Work Hard Anywhere is what you'll need to search for in your app store. And this is a crowdsourced app that lists hundreds of thousands of co-working spaces, coffee shops, restaurants around the world, and allocates them by exactly those points. Good Wi-Fi, good PowerPoints, great food, value for money, etc. So that's a great place to find a place to work. But find great workspaces and make it work for you. Then sort out your technology. You're going to need a battery charger. Last thing you want is if you can't find a power socket for your devices to die. So I carry around a spare battery and all the cables and connectors that I need. Probably you need a Wi-Fi hotspot for yourself. Because again, if you're relying on somebody else's Wi-Fi, and especially if they're giving it to you for free, you don't really have a right to demand it. So, your own Wi-Fi dongle might be valuable. Then have backups. I use a backup solution that I carry around with me, which even if everything crashes around me, I've got everything available to me within a few minutes. And use the cloud. And that really is the way of the future. Put as much of your work as you can in the cloud. Now listen, don't skimp on having the right technology to do your job. If you're working for a company, obviously you'll have an IT department and hopefully they'll help you out and do a good job for you. So maybe they won't. If you're working for yourself or if your IT department are just useless, it really is worth your while to spend a bit of money to find a techie who you can have on call. Just reach out to your network of friends, but have somebody who can be on the other end of a line who for a few dollars a month on retainer or for a few dollars every time you need them will just be able to help you. The last thing you want to do is spend hours and hours and hours trying to fix a technology problem. You're not a technology expert. Outsource that to another virtual worker who will do that for you. 10th, be consistent in your working hours. Now, I initially put somewhat consistent here because I'm not actually personally consistent. That's not my personality and I don't need it. But most virtual workers I know, they work better when they have a starting time and ending time, take breaks that kind of simulate what an office feels like. But you need to work out your own rhythm there. Let me just say one or two things here, though. Know when to switch off. A surprising issue here that research shows us over and over again is that most virtual workers, their bosses think that they are probably being lazy. The reality is they're working too hard. Most of us who work virtually, it's not that we battle to work, it's that we battle to know when to switch off. You need to learn how to do that. So, maybe you have a cutoff time at night and say, after this time, that's it. Everything gets switched off. I'm not responding to messages. Now, you have to be careful here because maybe you've got a team member like me who I kind of wake up at about 10 o'clock at night and I have really productive hours. After all my family's gone to bed, I have 2 or 3 productive hours around midnight. And we've had to have a really good conversation with the team to know if you get a message from me at 11 o'clock at night, you don't have to respond to it. Just because I sent you the message doesn't mean I'm insisting on a response. Well, I mean, if I'm not insisting, I shouldn't be insisting on a response. That would be crazy. But these are the types of agreements that your team has to come up with. Different people do flexibility in different ways, and we have to accept that. So be a little bit consistent in your working hours and have on and off times and take holidays. Don't, just because you're a virtual worker doesn't mean you don't get to say goodbye to the office for a few days, maybe even weeks at a time. Now, linking to this was a great piece of advice I picked up in my research. Manage your energy and not your time. You have the luxury of flexibility. Make that work for you. So it's up to you how you use your time. You're saving time in traveling and office chit chat. So don't waste it by loafing around. Exercise, give intentional time to your family, and then focus your energy on work. But if for whatever reason the work isn't flowing, step away. Go and do some exercise. Go and do something that gets you into a different zone. Just even change locations. That often can work. Change of scenery can work wonders for your mood and productivity. Your colleagues in the office don't have that luxury. Not much, really. You do, so use it. And just make sure that you group things together where you can. So like meetings with colleagues, virtual meetings, conference calls, and that, group them together as much as you can, kind of get them done and out the way so that you can give yourself a productivity gap. Don't be scared to have a do not disturb option with your colleagues, with your family, and have boundaries. Many of our team members, because they've got friends who maybe are unemployed or maybe working from home, or they don't understand that just because we work from home or work from a coffee shop doesn't mean we have complete flexibility. And you've often got people just popping in or saying, hey, can we just do this or that? Sometimes you do have to just put up these boundaries and manage your energy. So it's not just about managing time. You've got to know yourself here and manage your energy better. Now, I know I'm repeating myself, but I warned you, this is vital. Personally, you must purposefully engage with your colleagues. Tell them what you're doing. Keep them updated. Now, 13, don't forget to develop yourself. If you're not in the office, you might miss out on staff development and training opportunities. So make sure that you build that in to your timing. Read more, do online courses. And of course, if you're listening to this webinar, you are a member of the Future of Work Academy. And we give you 6 minutes every day of personal development. Build that into your time. 14, don't forget to promote yourself. Now, some of you, from a personality perspective, this is horrific to think about. But internally, you have to keep letting people, not just your boss, not just somebody you report to, but everybody know what you're doing. We do this once a week on a Sunday evening. As a team, we say, this is what my week is like ahead. And it's really just for the rest of the team to get a sense of what everybody else in the team is doing. And if you do something good, if you have a great day, if you churn out stuff, if the rest of the team can't see that productivity, just drop them a note. Initially, I know it feels weird, but I promise you it works well. And your team will understand and develop a sense of this being a good thing. So try it. Just promote yourself internally. And if you are a genuine virtual worker, and that means you also are looking for work all the time, well, then, of course, promote yourself externally as well. Get your skills out there. Let people know who you are and what you can do all of the time. Now, just by the way, just let me say at this point, I've just mentioned the Future of Work Academy, and one of the really great articles we've got this month is this one. It's 7 life hacks and critical tools for digital nomads. So I'm not repeating anything we've said in that article. And please make sure, maybe do it straight after this webinar, log into the Future of Work Academy and have a look at that article. It's a very practical article giving you apps, technology tips for the digital nomad. So the Future of Work Academy, please just contact Jude. Jude at thefutureofworkacademy.com, and she'll help you. Also, by the way, I found a fantastic resource. I've created a shortcut link to it, bit.ly, bit.ly /tips remote work. You can see it there on the screen, and Jude will pop this into the chat box for us now so that you've got the link. It's just a really great article called 21 Tried and True Tips for Remote Working. Highly recommend you read that to continue. Now, for those of you who were concentrating, you know that I said there were 15 things. Well, the 15th is that, hey, this is the future. Welcome to it. More and more and more people are going to be doing this. Already, it's estimated that about 45% of America's workforce, and this is probably true globally, do some kind of virtual working, with about 30% spending at least 20% of their working time as virtual workers. That number is just going to increase. This is the future. Right, if you'd like to contact me, that's how to contact me. There are my contact details. But I've just got one or two more things to say, and then we're going to shoot across to the Q&A. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And so there's going to be just a few seconds pause. So the final thing I wanted to say, and I realize I've taken slightly longer than I thought I would, but I hope this has been useful for you, is just very quickly, how do you implement virtual working in your office? If you're in an office and this is maybe now all of these tips and tricks, you think, okay, all of those make sense. We could do that. Maybe this is worth experimenting with our team. Well, just a few things. First of all, convince your boss to just do this as an experiment. That's the key phrase, as an experiment. It's going to have to be done maybe one day a week for 2 months, 2 to 3 months. You do need an extended period of time. So try and convince your boss to do it as an experiment with maybe just a few people in your team. Then listen to everybody's concerns and address those concerns. If it's the IT department, if it's a team leader, if it's an older person, whatever, get everybody's concerns and then address those concerns. If we're not sure how to address them, simply say, we will recognize these concerns and address them as they arise. But don't just ignore people's concerns. Then get as many people involved as possible. Even people who are not going to work virtually need to be involved in this, because they're going to want to communicate with you and be involved in all of the tech and everything else. Start slowly. A few people, a few hours a day or two a week, and then develop some common practices. You're going to have to sit down as a team, maybe re-listen to this webinar, and come up with some tips and tricks that can help you to make the most of this experiment that you're going to try. And then agree on how are you going to measure this? What is the measurement? We talked about that, but have specific agreement. So I think there's a lot of conversation. Then you sort of ring fence. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to measure. Then just go for it. And I hope that you can get it done. By the way, there's another really great article. I'll ask Jude to just drop this link in for you now. It's bit.ly/makeflextimework. Make flex time work. And it's a really excellent article for you to read to help you to try this. And maybe it's an article to give to your boss or your team to read as well. This is going to be a constant work in progress. Even with all the processes in place and all the technology working and having done it for years and years and years, we constantly try things. We constantly do new things. Every now and again, we realize something we're doing isn't working and we have to adjust. You're going to be working on this forever. But hopefully, we've given you a good start. Hopefully, we've given you some great ideas to work with. And we're now going to shift across to a Q&A time. While I'm getting you to think about that Q&A, I just want to quickly talk to you about the Future of Work Academy, and I'm just going to quickly jump back to my slides to do that. So start putting your Q&A questions. So I'm sure you're aware of the Future of Work Academy. You had to be a member in order to sign up for this webinar. But just to make sure that and future trends and strategy, and with between 8 and 10 resources that will take you between 5 and 10 minutes to access every month. The idea is to just give you every day or every other day 5 or 6 minutes of personal development in the future of work space. And then as a bonus for you, all of Tomorrow Today's online courses, from Future Fit Leadership to Mind the Gap to Tomorrow's World Today, are all available to you for free. And in fact, on the 1st of May, we're adding a brand new online course called Thinking Like a Futurist. So look out for that next month in the Academy. So if you have any questions about the Academy, Jude's the person to contact. And please make sure that you look around. April's Academy is specifically about virtual working. There's a lot of great resources that will add to what you've heard in this webinar. So now we're going to shift across and shift back to my screen. Sorry, I think we might have lost a bit of connection there for a moment. Anyway, now we have a Q&A. So let's have a look now at what we have got. Okay, just wanting to check, can you all see the screen still, those of you who are still with us? Okay, thank you, Andrea and Raymond, for some of your suggestions. I see that some of you are suggesting that we use Slack, which is a lot of people are talking about that. That's fantastic. Excellent, thanks. I don't see any questions coming through. Any questions from anybody? While you're thinking of questions, or anybody who's live with us now, don't forget, if you're watching a recording of this, you're welcome to come to the private Facebook group for the Future of Work Academy, and we can answer your questions there now. But live, if there are any questions coming through, I'll pick them up. For now, I know there are always two questions that pop up from clients when we talk about this. The first one has got to do with conflict. Conflict is a lot easier to handle when you are face to face. In a virtual team, probably one of the biggest problems is that we tend to let things fester. And relationships, because you can't see somebody giving you a horrible look across the office, or maybe that vibe that is sometimes in the office, because you don't experience that, you might not know that your relationship is in a difficult place. And so often it explodes in virtual teams because it normally is around some crisis or stress point in the team. So obviously, try not to get to that point with constant communication, but we have to learn as a virtual team to not let our frustrations build and boil and grow, but to kind of deal with them as soon as we see them emerging. It's easier said than done, but it's worth doing. And often it's more a communication via phone or voice, where possible, even face to face. Chris has saying that baby boomer managers are not embracing virtual reality. Chris, good grief, you are 100% right. I won't mention any names, but many of our clients, I cannot believe how many of our clients kind of give a little bit of lip service to living in the digital world and living in the new century and the new world of work. But then one of their younger team members wants to work from home, and the sort of 45, 50 plus age group just says no. And they give us every excuse under the sun. The technology is not going to work. The team dynamics, clients won't experience it. I don't have an easy answer for you, except that maybe some of what we've talked about today, you will notice it's not been a technology webinar. A lot of it has just got to do about communication, connection, engagement, relationship, and boomers love that stuff. So convince them by proving to them that you will and can stay connected. Chris, also, some companies tried virtual working, say 3 years ago or 5 years ago, and it didn't work because the technology was rubbish. I mean, really, in 5 years, we've come a long way. And it might be worth just getting them to try it again because the technology has improved so much. So Lindsay asks a really great question. We are moving to flexible working with an organization of around 300. That's a big group to move to virtual. So what changes in management approach are going to be most critical to success? Great question, Lindsay. Here are three things that jump to mind. The first is you're going to have to forget control. Command and control does not work in a virtual environment. Now, I know that we say this over and over again. It feels like a cliche every course you go on. But in a virtual environment, trust is imperative. And just for those people who feel in their hearts that, hey, why is my coworker only getting out of bed at 10 in the morning? And, why am I getting emails at 11 o'clock at night? You're going to have to get that stuff. You're going to have to talk about that stuff, but get it out the way. We can no longer judge ourselves on hours. Some people can, between 10 o'clock at night and 1 o'clock in the morning, I work almost every day during those hours. I promise you I get 5 hours work done in those 3 hours, mainly because nobody else in the team is working. And every time I hit send and receive, I don't get anything coming in. And also it just suits my body rhythm. So not everybody can work that way. And if I had a boss who was saying, why aren't you working at 9 in the morning? Or a boss who said, why am I seeing you going out on a lunchtime run? Or why are you with your kids watching movies in the afternoon? That just doesn't work. So firstly, get rid of that kind of thinking. And that it's a big ask, but worth doing. Secondly, investigate something called holacracy. Let me type that in for you there. Ray, if you're still on the line, please double check this website. Holacracy, I think I've spelt it correctly, and I think it's a .org. Holacracy has been picked up by Amazon and by other big companies around the world. And it's essentially, instead of having pyramids for your management, structures, they are circles and interlocking circles. The key thing, Lindsay, I want to get across to you here is it's about the fact that in different circles, so circles relate to functions and projects, and each function and project has a different leadership team. And you will have different roles in different teams. So in one team, I might be the leader of the team. So let's say into the Tomorrow Today environment, in the webinar space, I am the leader of the team. I'm the one who knows best how to do webinars. If somebody else wants to do a webinar, I'm going to be there. I'm going to manage them. I'm going to help them and manage them and hold them accountable and assist them. But in another environment, I might not at all be. So in leadership development programs, for example, I'm just a member of the team, an ordinary member of the team, and I'm not the leader, and I don't have its kind of final sign off. And it takes a bit of getting used to that you might be the leader in one team, but not in the other. And someone who reports to you in one space doesn't in the other. Now, Lindsay, the reason I'm saying this is because in a virtual environment, you get a lot more engagement if different people feel that they have leadership and responsibility for different things in the business. So it really is about flattening the structures and sharing out leadership responsibility a little bit more. And then the third thing that jumped to mind, Lindsay, with your excellent question, is do it step by step. If you're going to try and jump 300 people from working in an office to working in a virtual environment, you're going to just blow the place up if you do it all at once. Go team by team, step by step. Take it slowly. It'll be worth a while, and learn. Maybe there's a fourth thing: learn lessons, feedback loops. Try something. If it doesn't work, let everybody know. Try something else. If it doesn't work, let everybody know. This constant feedback, open experimentation, happy with failure, but learning quickly and moving on. Right, I see our time is up. We were aiming for an hour. We always do with our webinars. As you could hear, I could probably go on and on with this, but thank you for your time and for your engagement with this webinar. If you have any further questions, please hop into that Facebook group or send Jude an email, and we'll continue to connect with you. This webinar has been recorded and will be available within the Future of Work Academy, so you can come back at any stage and review it. My notes will be uploaded with it as well. And one final question from my side, maybe just as we close out. If you have any requests for topics of our webinars in the future, please contact us. Just simply right now, you could drop that into the chat room and just let us know, or at any stage, send us an email or send us a note in the Facebook group. We'd love to hear from you. We want to be as helpful as we can to you. So any topics, if we have an expert on our team, we'll drop them into a webinar, an upcoming webinar. Otherwise, we'll do the research for you and bring you hopefully another hour's worth of valuable advice next month. So thanks again for being part of this, and look forward to seeing you again sometime soon.